From the very first day they got married, the cracks had already begun. Kenneth was a simple, thoughtful man, the kind who believed in family and quiet evenings at home. Cynthia was the opposite, beautiful, bold, and unapologetically ambitious. She got married at 35, not because she was ready for marriage, but because everyone around her began to ask questions. Cynthia, when will you settle down? She chose Kenneth because he was stable, respectful, and wouldn't interfere with her plans. But there was one thing she made clear even before they signed the dotted lines. My career comes first, not you, not your family, not even our children when we give birth. Kenneth's smile was small. It shook like a leaf. He whispered, I hear you. After the wedding, the reality set in quickly. On their first morning as husband and wife, she stood in the kitchen with her arms folded. Kenneth, let's not deceive ourselves, she said. You need to employ a house help. I can't be running to the market, cooking, and still meeting business clients. Kenneth frowned. Cynthia, this is our home. We can manage it together. We don't need a stranger in our space. She laughed lightly, picked up her car keys, and walked out. Then be ready to cook when I'm not around. And that was how it started. Some days she cooked. Some days she didn't. Sometimes she swept the house. Other times she rushed out with her laptop saying, I have a pitch. I'll clean when I return. She was never around long enough to return. Kenneth adjusted, slowly, painfully. He began doing most of the chores himself. He cooked, he cleaned, he folded clothes. At night, when he tried to talk, she would be asleep or pretending to be. The distance grew quietly. 4 years passed like that. Then finally, one day, she walked into the bedroom holding a pregnancy test strip, 2 red lines. Kenneth was overwhelmed with joy. Thank you, God, he whispered as he hugged her tightly. Cynthia smiled. It's good news, but I hope you know it changes nothing about my work. Kenneth nodded slowly. We'll manage it together. But he hoped things would be different. He hoped that motherhood would slow her down, at least enough to be present. He was wrong. During her pregnancy, she didn't rest. She attended meetings, flew across cities, and posted daily on social media. When people saw her, they smiled and said, Madam, you should rest. You're carrying a baby. She would laugh, that proud, ringing laugh of hers. Pregnancy is not a sickness, she said. I can handle it. Kenneth watched her with quiet eyes. He wished she would slow down, even for a moment. At home, he turned the empty room beside their bedroom into a nursery. He painted the walls a soft yellow, the color of morning sun. He folded tiny clothes and placed them in a drawer. He bought small toys, rattles, and a blanket that smelled of hope. When she finally gave birth to a baby girl, they named her Tolu. Kenneth hoped that things would change now, but even before the baby was a month old, Cynthia was already preparing to travel. One morning, as Kenneth changed the baby's diaper, Cynthia stood in front of the mirror applying lipstick. Kenneth, she said without turning, I told you before, I can't just sit at home and babysit all day. I'm too young for that life. He turned to her. It's not about sitting at home, Cynthia. It's about raising our child. She needs her mother. She turned sharply. So, because I gave birth, my life should stop. Is that what you're saying? Kenneth sighed. He knew that tone. Whenever Cynthia spoke like that, the argument was already over. If you love me, Kenneth, you won't rob me of my youth, she said, grabbing her purse. He watched her walk out. The scent of her perfume lingered long after she was gone. And just like that, the parenting burden fell on him again. But now, with a child in the picture, it was heavier than ever. At first, Cynthia dropped the baby with their neighbor, Mama Emeka. Please help me hold her for a few hours. I have a meeting, she would say. It was once a week, then twice, then every day. Sometimes she came back late at night. Sometimes she didn't come back at all. One afternoon, as the sun burned softly through the curtains, Mama Emeka stood by the door, holding little Tolu. The baby was asleep on her shoulder. She called softly, Kenneth, my son, come outside small. Kenneth came, his face weary but polite. She looked at him and sighed. My son, your wife leaves this baby too much. I'm not her mother. I don't mind helping once in a while, but it's becoming every day. Kenneth lowered his eyes. I understand, Mama. I'll talk to her, Mama. Emeka nodded, her voice gentle. Children need their mothers. Oh, a stranger's arm can never carry love the same way. Kenneth smiled faintly. Thank you, Mama. He went inside and sat at the edge of the bed. Cynthia was standing before the mirror, applying powder, humming softly to herself. He wanted to speak. His lips moved, but the words died before they reached his tongue, because he knew it would lead to another fight. The years moved slowly, like water dripping from an old tap. Little Tolu had grown, walking, talking, and laughing with the sound of sunshine. Kenneth's heart was full whenever he heard her tiny footsteps around the house. But even with a child, the house still felt empty. Cynthia was always away. Meetings in Abuja, conferences in Port Harcourt, interviews on TV. Her face was on magazines more than it was at home. Then, one morning, she came out of the bathroom holding another test strip, two red lines shining faintly. Kenneth looked up from the newspaper. His eyes widened. You're pregnant? She nodded. Yes. He dropped the paper, his face glowing. Maybe this time you will stay home. Cynthia smiled faintly, her lipstick neat and calm. No, Kenneth. Let's get a maid. I can't keep disturbing Mama Emeka. She's getting old. Kenneth frowned. He rubbed his chin slowly. People are wicked, he said quietly. We have to be careful. I've heard stories. Cynthia waved her hand, already picking up her car keys. Please, Kenneth, stop being afraid. Everyone uses maids. We can't live like villagers. Her tone was sharp, final. Kenneth looked at her for a long moment, then sighed deeply. Every conversation ended in frustration. In the end, he gave in. His voice dropped. All right, you can get one. And that was the day another chapter began. Her name was Grace. Grace came early on a Friday morning. She stood by the gate with her small bag and her quiet smile. Her voice was soft, almost like music. Good morning, sir, she said. Good morning, madam. Cynthia smiled proudly. You see, Kenneth? I told you I know good people when I see them. Kenneth nodded, watching Grace. She was tall, neat, and humble. Her hair was tied back neatly. Her dress was clean and simple. He said softly, You chose well. From that day, Grace became part of their lives. She carried Tolu on her back, sang songs in low, sweet tones, and fed her gently. When Cynthia gave birth to their second baby, Grace cared for both children as though they were her own. She cooked delicious meals, washed clothes, and told stories that made the children laugh. Cynthia would smile and say, That girl is a blessing. Kenneth agreed. He liked how she was always calm, never complained, and always smiled. Thank you, Grace, he would say sometimes. She would bow her head slightly. "It's nothing, sir. The children are good children." But when the lights went out and everyone was asleep, Grace changed. She would slip out of her room quietly, dressed in tight jeans and shiny tops. Perfume followed her like a trail. She went to nightclubs, laughed loudly, danced wildly, and returned before dawn, smelling of smoke and drink. Sometimes she brought strangers home, men with loud laughter and cold eyes. They would sneak in through the back door, whispering and laughing softly while the children slept. Cynthia never noticed. Her nights were spent in hotels, her mornings in meetings. Kenneth didn't know. He was often away for business too, trusting Grace completely. The house looked peaceful, the children looked happy. But beneath that peace, something dark had entered, quiet as a shadow and patient as night. Then one night, something happened. The moon was quiet that night. The house slept softly, except for laughter coming from the sitting room. Grace sat on the couch, legs crossed, a drink in her hand. Beside her was a tall, slim man with sharp eyes and a careless smile. His name was Stanley. He poured more drink into her glass. "You're too fine to be a nanny," he said, grinning. Grace giggled, her voice sweet like honey but thick with danger. "Don't start your trouble tonight." They both laughed, the sound filling the air like broken glass. Little Tolu and her baby sister were on the carpet, playing with their toys. Tolu looked up, sleepy-eyed. "Auntie Grace," she whispered, "I want to sleep." Grace smiled sweetly, her face soft again. "Go and lie down in my room, dear," she said. Tolu nodded, stood up slowly, and walked away with her small doll in hand. Moments later, Grace followed with Stanley. The door to her room closed quietly. Behind it, laughter turned into whispers, whispers into sounds that should never fill a child's house. That night changed everything. The next weekend, Stanley came again. The children were watching cartoons when the knock came. Grace opened the door, smiling too widely. "Tolu, come and greet Uncle," she said. The little girl hesitated, clutching her toy. Stanley bent low, his grin cold. Grace whispered, "Don't worry, Uncle loves children." Her voice was soft, but her eyes were hard. That night, the evil began. And from then on, every weekend was a shadow. Every laugh from the living room hid something dark. Every whisper from Grace's room carried pain a child could not name. The house still looked peaceful, but the peace was gone. Morning came, like it always did, light through the window, birds in the tree, children's laughter in the distance. But in that house, silence had built a wall. Grace woke early, smiling as always. She combed Tolu's hair, fed her breakfast, and sang soft songs. But when she bent close, her voice turned to a whisper. "Tolu," she said gently, "don't ever tell your parents what happens when Uncle visits. This is our secret." Tolu's small hands trembled around her spoon. "But Auntie," she whispered. Grace touched her cheek. "If you tell them," she said slowly, "they will send me away. And you don't want that, do you? You love me, right?" Tolu nodded weakly, afraid. "Yes, Auntie." Grace smiled and kissed her forehead. "Good girl." From that day, something inside Tolu began to fade. Grace became her mother, her teacher, and her nightmare, all at once. Cynthia traveled even more. She posted pictures online, smiling at parties, shaking hands at events, her face shining under bright lights. Kenneth was busy too, moving from one state to another for work. He would call and say, "How are my girls?" And Grace would reply sweetly, "They're fine, sir. Don't worry. No one saw the truth." No one noticed the fear behind Tolu's quiet eyes. No one saw how she flinched when Grace touched her shoulder. Every morning, Grace smiled like nothing was wrong. She hummed while cooking, swept the floor, and joked with the neighbors. But when night came, her shadow grew long and cruel. The children grew, their faces bright, but their hearts heavy with pain they could not speak of. And in that house, love had gone quiet, replaced by a secret that would one day destroy everything. The years ran fast, like rainwater chasing itself down the road. Tolu had grown, her voice softer, her smile quieter. But inside, she carried something heavy, something no one could see. Because right from high school, she had already started seeing boys, just like she'd been seeing Grace do. No one knew. Not her father, not her mother, not even Grace herself. But her secret wasn't hidden for long. One morning, she woke up holding her stomach. It hurt badly. She tried to eat but vomited once, twice. Then again, her hands shook as she reached for her phone. "Auntie Grace," she cried, "I don't feel well. My stomach is paining me." Grace came quickly, her face calm, her bag swinging by her side. She looked at Tolu, then at her belly. Her eyes narrowed. "You are pregnant," she said coldly. Tolu froze. The word hit her like a stone. "What? No. How?" Grace sighed, pretending to think. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll take care of it." She took Tolu that evening to a small, dirty house at the edge of town. The place smelled of herbs, smoke, and sickness. An old woman sat by a wooden table, her eyes dark and knowing. Grace greeted her quietly. "Mama, as usual." The woman nodded. She told Tolu to lie down on a hard wooden bench. Tolu trembled, her tears running like a small stream. The old woman mixed something in a calabash, green, thick, and bitter. When she gave it to her, Tolu cried in pain. The sound echoed in the tiny room, soft and broken. That day, her childhood ended. Grace said nothing on the way home. Only the wind spoke, whispering through the car window. It happened again the next year. Same pain. Same place. Tolu stopped crying after that. Her heart had become numb. By the time she went to university, she was no longer the same girl. She laughed loudly now, danced wildly, and went wherever boys called her. Her friends called her the free one. She called herself grown. But inside her, something had died long ago. And she never even knew when it happened. University life was wild and bright. Music filled the nights. Girls wore perfume and laughter. Boys carried sweet lies in their mouths. Tolu was always at the center. She smiled easily, flirted freely, and told her friends, "I love it raw. No protection. I hate condoms." Her friends laughed, thinking she was bold. But deep down, she was only lost, chasing the shadow of the love Grace stole from her. One day, after another careless night, she felt the familiar fear. Her stomach hurt again. She went to the pharmacy, bought pills, and swallowed them quietly. But something went wrong. By evening, she was bleeding. By night, she could barely stand. Her roommates screamed and rushed her to the hospital. Doctors carried her into surgery. When she woke up, the air smelled clean, but her heart felt empty. A doctor stood beside her bed. His face was calm, his voice soft. "We had to remove your womb to save your life." Tolu stared at him, her lips dry. "My womb?" she whispered. He nodded sadly. "I'm sorry." She turned her face to the wall and cried all night. The sound was small but deep, like rain falling into a broken pot. Years passed. She finished school and went for NYSC. There she met Testimony, a tall, kind man with warm eyes and easy laughter. He loved her deeply. He said, "You are all I need, Tolu. You make me happy." They got married after 1 year. Kenneth and Cynthia smiled at the wedding, thinking the past was gone. But time carried its own truth. 2 years later, no baby came. They went to the hospital together. The doctor ran the tests and came out quietly. "Mr. Testimony," he said softly, "your wife can never get pregnant." The room fell silent. Testimony stared at the wall, his face cold. Tolu began to cry. He stood up, walked to the door, and left. No words, no goodbye. That night, he drove her to her parents' house. When she came down from the car, her eyes were swollen, her hands trembling. Testimony opened the car door and said coldly, "Take your daughter. She's empty. I don't need her." He drove off into the night, his headlights fading like a bad dream. Tolu fell to her knees, crying into her palms. And inside the house, Kenneth and Cynthia stood frozen, their hearts breaking for the daughter they had failed to protect. The evening was heavy. Like the sky carried tears, it refused to drop. Testimony's car stopped in front of Kenneth's house. The door opened sharply, and his voice came out, cold and bitter. "Take your daughter," he said. "She's empty. I don't need her." Cynthia stood by the doorway, confused. Kenneth came forward, his hands shaking. "What happened?" But Testimony didn't answer. He turned and drove away, his tires screaming against the road. Tolu fell to her knees. Her hair covered her face. "Daddy, Mommy, please forgive me," she sobbed. "I have to confess." Cynthia's heart jumped. "Confess what?" Tolu raised her head slowly. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling. "It started with Auntie Grace," she whispered. The room went cold. Kenneth froze. "What about Grace?" he asked quietly, his voice already breaking. Tolu's words spilled out like a river too full to hold. "She used to bring men home when you both traveled. One night, she told me to follow her and a man into her room. I was only 10, Tolu nodded, crying harder. She took me to a woman for abortion, twice. She said it was the only way to hide it. And after that, I started doing it with boys. I couldn't stop. I didn't even know who I was anymore." Her voice broke into sobs. "Now, because of everything, they removed my womb. I can never give you a grandchild." The room went still. Kenneth sat slowly on the chair, his face empty. He whispered to no one, "God, what did I do wrong?" Cynthia fell to her knees beside her daughter. Her tears rolled down her cheeks like rain that wouldn't end. "This is my fault," she cried. "All my fault. I left you to strangers. I thought I was building a future, but I destroyed my home." Tolu held her tightly. "Mommy, please, stop crying." But the crying didn't stop. It filled the house, deep and low, like thunder hiding behind the hills. And that night, silence sat with them. A silence too heavy for words, too deep for sleep. 3 months passed, but peace never returned. The house that once smelled of baby powder and soft laughter now smelled of tears and regret. Then one morning, as Cynthia was in the kitchen boiling water, her phone rang. She picked it up lazily, her eyes swollen from another night of crying. "Hello, Mrs. Kenneth," the voice said. It was sharp and official. "Yes," she replied weakly. "Your daughter Toyo has been caught with drugs. She's in police custody." Cynthia froze. The phone slipped from her hand and fell into the sink. Her scream filled the house. "Jesus! Drugs? My Toyo?" She fainted before Kenneth even reached her. When she woke up, she was already in the car. Kenneth was driving fast, his jaw tight, his eyes red. They didn't speak a word until they reached the station. When they saw Toyo, she was no longer the bright girl they knew. Her face was pale, her lips dry, her eyes empty. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry." Cynthia ran to her and hugged her tight. "My child!" "What happened?" Toyo trembled. "A friend introduced me to a man. He said he could help me make money. He asked me to carry a bag for him. I didn't know it had drugs inside." Kenneth's voice cracked. "You were trafficking drugs?" Toyo nodded, tears falling fast. "They beat me in the cell, Daddy." "I stayed there for months." Cynthia held her and wept loudly. "God, why my children?" Toyo buried her face in her mother's chest. "I'm sorry, Mommy." "I wanted to help. I didn't want to be poor." After 3 months, Toyo was released. She came home with scars on her arms, her back, and her heart. She sat quietly in her room, staring at the wall for hours. One evening, Cynthia went to her. "Toyo, my child, talk to me." Toyo turned her face slowly. "Mommy, I met that man again in school before it happened. He gave me drugs. He said it would help me forget pain. But it didn't. It made me worse. Now I have infection. I don't think I will ever be fine again." Cynthia fell to the floor, wailing. "God, what did I do? Why my children?" Kenneth stood by the door, his face blank, his voice low. "Maybe God is punishing us." That night, he didn't sleep. He packed his clothes quietly into a bag. By morning, the bed beside Cynthia was empty. His car was gone. His phone was off. Cynthia searched for him everywhere. Days turned into weeks. No word, no sign. She was alone, with her broken daughters and the ruins of her choices. Then one afternoon, her phone beeped. It was a message from an unknown number. She opened it slowly. "Look at your life," it said. "As rich as you are, you couldn't raise your own children. You failed." At the bottom, one word appeared: Grace. Cynthia's hands began to shake. She dropped the phone, her heart pounding. "No, no, no," she screamed. Her daughters rushed into the room. "Mommy!" "What is it?" Tolu cried. But Cynthia was already on the floor, trembling. Her breath came short and fast. Her eyes rolled back. The past had come back to destroy her completely. And in that quiet house, filled with sorrow and ghosts of old laughter, only pain remained, silent, deep, and endless. Moral of the story: a mother's absence can destroy a home faster than poverty. Beauty and comfort mean nothing if a child grows without love and guidance. In every decision, remember, the hands that raise your children shape their destiny. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, share with friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more African folk tales just like this one. Thank you.